It's time for another edition of Faculty Spotlight. Joining me is Alan Webb. Mr. Webb, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
You are an English instructor, and we'll get into that in just a little bit, as well as acting director of the Laredo College Honors Program. So I'm going to want to know more about that so we can share that with our audience. But first, tell me a little bit about yourself.
I am an English professor here at the college. I've been here since 2009. I teach both composition and literature, and I've been teaching honors English classes for about a decade, and this semester they made me the acting director of the honors program.
So when did your teaching career begin?
In 2009.
So here this is your first teaching gig?
Yes.
You never taught at any other level?
No, not college classes, no.
Okay. When did you know you wanted to be in education?
I always knew.
Yeah.
From college.
Yeah.
When I was watching the professors teach, I thought it would be cool to be one of them.
Well, I mean, that's pretty unique because I don't think many people say, I want to do that, especially during college courses. Where did you get your education, here in Laredo, or were you somewhere else?
No, I for my undergraduate, I went to Indiana University. For my master's, I went to TAMU, and then for my PhD, I went to the University of Kentucky. Although I didn't finish the PhD.
Yeah. Are you from Laredo, or are you...
I'm half from Laredo. My mom and her family are here, and my dad and his family were other places. So I moved back and forth between Laredo and other places.
How many other places have you lived?
Quite a few places.
A lot.
A lot of places.
What was the most unique place you lived, do you think?
I spent my childhood in England, mostly in a city called Derby. And I came to the United States when I was 12. I was born in Mexico. We moved to England when I was very little. And then we came to America when I was about 12 years old.
What do you remember about England? I mean, I know you were young.
Well, I mean, I was 12 when I left, so I have a lot of memories there. I just, remember my childhood there, growing up, the people, the food, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. If you could compare it to the United States, what was the difference, if any?
People are people. Whether here or there, slightly different accents, slightly different traditions, but the people are the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you like about teaching English?
I always thought, it would be really cool to have a job where I could talk about some really good stories. So that's kind of the job I have. I get to choose the stories I teach. So I try to focus on stories I think the students will enjoy, and then we get to talk about the stories, and we get to watch movies. So that's pretty cool.
You mentioned composition and literature. Can you
Yes.
tell us what the difference is between the both?
Yeah, composition focuses on the essay writing process, although you can write essays over literature. When it comes to literature class, the focus is the literature itself. It also contains essays, but the focus isn't the essay writing, it's the literature. Right? So the ideas in the literature rather than the ideas of how to put an essay together.
Are all of these 8-week courses that you're teaching?
They are now, yes.
Okay. What's your style like? What does a typical class look like?
It changes from composition to literature. If it's literature, we discuss the readings the student had assigned to read for that day. It could be a short story, it could be a poetry, it could be a poem, it could be a novel. It all depends on the class I'm teaching. I teach British literature as well as American literature 1 or 2. In British literature, we focus more on really early works, especially in part 1. So we start with works like Beowulf that are really old, then we move on to Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, things like that, things that have been around for a long time.
Sure.
And American Lit 2, we have the newest works that we teach. And I think the newest work I teach is a short story by Sandra Cisneros, who I actually saw speak here at Laredo College in the 90s.
So you said you also teach the honors English, right?
Yes.
So what's the difference between the honors English and the original?
Honors English, we go a little bit more in depth on the material. They're also required to give a presentation that regular students aren't. And it's smaller classes, so it sort of, it allows for that level of depth in conversation with the students.
Is it hard to engage students today with literature?
No, I wouldn't say it's hard. I would say I'm adjusting as I go along. Each generation I teach, I recognize that they're different, and I need to reach them in a slightly different way. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it does take me a while to change my style, to adjust it to the new student.
Yeah.
But like I said, that's always a work in process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty much a every year deal, even and sometimes an everyday deal.
Yeah.
You have to adjust your
sure.
style.
Yeah, the
based
students
on
I have now are a lot different than the students I had when I first started teaching, and I need to reach them in a slightly different way. Part of that is possibly incorporating technologies in my classroom that just weren't around before to keep students interested.
Yeah. How do you see the student? How has the student changed?
Very much more technology oriented.
Yeah.
Slightly harder to grab their attention because they're used to focusing on so many different things at once now. So now if they're watching TV, they're also on their phone at the same time.
Yes,
I notice I do that too now. So I'm used to stretching my attention a little bit, but that also reduces sort of the intensity of that focus.
Yeah.
Right. So it can be a little bit more challenging.
And a lot of what they're watching is short clips.
Yeah, that also.
And that it really affects the attention.
Definitely. The amount of information that the modern student has to integrate is incredible. Each video that they watch has tremendous amounts of information attached to it. And even if they're not focusing on specific information, their mind picks up that information, right? All that background information. So in a 20-minute period, you watch 100 videos, how much information has that student consumed?
Of the classes that you teach, which one is required?
A core classes?
Yeah, core
It
class.
depends on the major. So 1301 composition 1 is required for all majors. 1302 composition 2 is required for some majors, and then once again literature is required for some majors.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite author, favorite writer?
That changes a lot. It's like your favorite movie. I have a group of favorite movies. Just like I have a group of favorite stories, depending on I guess how I feel.
What's the group of favorite movies? Do you have them classified, or is it by franchise?
It's hard to say what your favorite movie is. Like I love the Matrix movies, you know what I mean. But then there are also other movies that stick out, like Fight Club. It also depends on what I'm thinking about at the time.
Yeah.
It may change. It's the same thing with literature. I have some stories that I really like of some authors like Vonnegut, but then that may change, and I may go through a phase where I'm just focusing on Paradise Lost with John Milton because I really enjoy that also.
Yeah.
So it changes.
Sure.
Like we all go through these phases. Yeah.
If you were to go home right now and watch a movie, what would it be?
Oh, I don't know.
It depends on what you're feeling at the moment.
Yeah, it depends on what's available on my streaming service that I don't have to pay for right now. If there's a new one out, then I'll probably try and watch that one.
It's pretty amazing how even the streaming experience compared to 10 years ago.
Oh, it's totally different. I call it directed viewing. Before, I remember growing up, there was always the TV on in the background. Half the time it was playing stuff I didn't want to watch, but we had to get through it to get something I did want to watch at a later time period. But now students can just focus in on what they want to watch, and they don't need to have all that background television going on that we used to have back in the day.
What's also changed is that it's hard to find one particular show that everybody is watching.
Yeah.
Back in the day, everybody tuned in at 7 o'clock for that one show, and so now that's completely changed. But I digress because that's
no. That's very important. I mean that same issue runs through education also. It used to be that everybody was on the same page about something, and then we've become so large as a population, so diverse as a population that we're going to splinter off into different groups, each with our own interests. And not that one interest is more valid than another, but you have to recognize that when you're teaching students also, because that exists in the population at large and in the student population because they make up that larger population.
How would you describe the typical Laredo College student?
Interested in getting an education, worried about what's happening in the country, worried about the direction the country's headed, and worried about their future, about getting a career, about buying a house.
Yeah. More so than when you first started, would you say?
Yes, more so. Students, when I first started, I think were a little more disconnected from what was going on in the country at the time, from the news. But news is sort of taken up over our lives right now. So many different news sources saying so many different things. I think that's part of what you have to understand when you're engaging in these students also.
Do you think the fact that they have more access to news has changed to the way things are seen? I mean, they're even seeing it on TikTok.
Yes,
they're getting their news from YouTube.
Yeah, because the definition of what news is has changed. And so they are accessing news, but maybe in formats that before my generation wouldn't have considered news. But to them, it is news. And so they're having people, and so many different videos, saying sometimes contradictory things, that it can be hard, and it can be frustrating, it can be anxiety producing to see so much division in society that we see now that sort of wasn't something that was on their plate before.
Sure, and you see it affecting the students.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. They, especially when more in composition classes, when it comes to things that they want to discuss and they want to talk about. With literature, it's always the material, and sometimes what's going on in society makes its way into that literature. And I try to make it sometimes. It kind of makes the literature pertinent, right, relevant to what's happening. But mostly it's in the composition classes when they choose topics to write about.
How has AI affected what you do?
Affected a lot, really, probably English more than most subjects. That's because, especially in composition, it's our job to look at a student's writing, to judge that writing, right? And then, well, if it's not their writing, that's kind of hard to do. It's just kind of what we're dealing with now. Not to say that students are purposely going to an AI site and having an entire essay generator for them. What we're seeing now is that many students have an autocorrect features on whatever word tools they're using, word processing tools they're using. Let's say it's Google Docs or Microsoft Word. The autocorrect features can incorporate AI now and reword their sentences for them. So those essays are coming out as AI essays, and that's something we're having to deal with now. It's a larger and larger problem, but it's something that's a transitional issue. At some point, we're going to get to a space where we've kind of figured this out, but we're still kind of in that transitional phase, right?
What about an AI tool to recognize whether a student used AI?
We do use one.
Yeah.
We have a plagiarism detection device called Turnitin, which originally we bought to catch plagiarism, but now they're also incorporating algorithms to determine whether essays are AI. So that's how we're catching that AI now also.
And does it, typically AI works based on what you tell it, what the prompt is. Can you kind of train the tool to recognize more and more, or does it just have a standard set of this has been AI generated?
The Turnitin itself would just tell you if something's AI generated. Now, there are different forms of AI generation. I mean, you have entire essays that are generated, and then you have essays that were written by a student but then have been reworded by AI. In both cases, they'll come up as AI generated material. So what we're trying to try and do now is work with the student, let them know that these autocorrect features can be considered AI, and then show them how to turn them off.
And in the midst of all this, you still have to teach. That's quite the challenge. Before we wrap up, tell me about the Laredo College Honors Program.
The Honors Program is this wonderful program. We reach out to different schools in the community to let students know if they want to apply to the program, if they have a certain GPA, if they were in a certain percentage of their class, then to please apply, and we can give them a stipend up to $5,000 per year that's above and beyond any financial aid they may also receive.
Oh, wow,
so
great.
it's a great opportunity for the students. Beyond that, there's their honors classes are a little bit smaller, as I mentioned before, so we can go a little bit more in depth with the students. And they're also required to do things like community service and attend some conferences to help them bring out maybe some leadership quality in them.
Can somebody look into the Laredo College Honors Program, or you have to reach out? Do you reach out to them, or how does it work?
Both. I reach out to local schools, but also they can find us online. Laredo College Honors Program. Just Google it, and it'll bring up our page that's on our Laredo College homepage.
If you wouldn't have been a teacher, what would you have been?
I bartended for 10 years,
Really?
but I stayed in school while I was doing it. I know eventually I was going to go into education, but I delayed that for a while because I bartended, and I also ran an employment agency for a while. I often think that there isn't anything else I wanted to do.
Really?
I write. So if I don't think I'll ever make a living as a writing, but I do write on the side, and that's something I would be if that opportunity came in the future, then that would be something I wouldn't say no to. But right now I still love teaching, and I'm the editor to La Frontera too, which is our literary magazine that we had at Laredo College. To mention that briefly, we publish one issue yearly. Most of the contributions are from our students. We publish short stories, poetry, and photography, artistic photography. No opinion editorials, right? Mostly creative stuff. It's our literary magazine. And so usually we publish that once a year in the spring. And you can Google that also, La Frontera Laredo College, and that page will come up. And you can see our past issues that we now have archived on our site.
Is it? Are there actual hard copies as well, or is it all digital?
There used to be.
Okay.
But then about 5 or 6 years ago, we moved entirely online.
Okay. And it's called La Frontera once a
La
year?
Frontera, yes.
Is it in English and Spanish, or there a combination? Or?
The issue is in English. The contributions can be English or Spanish.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
All right. Sounds good. Mr. Webb, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Nice to meet you. Thank you very much.